The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Mary set out and traveled to the hill country in haste, to a town of Judah, where she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the infant leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth, filled with the Holy Spirit, cried out in a loud voice and said, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And how does this happen to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For at the moment the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the infant in my womb leapt for joy. Blessed are you who believed that what was spoken to you by the Lord would be fulfilled." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.
Good evening. There's been many wonderful and holy women in my life. My grandmother, a child bride herself, a homesteader on the plains of Dakota, a young woman facing a lot of uncertainty at the time, and the hardships of a pioneer sort of life. Side by side with her husband, she cut sod from the prairie to build their first one-room home, giving birth and raising 4 children. Through the Depression and beyond, always trusting in God, and as I now recall, always laughing and filled with a deep sense of real joy. And then there's certainly my mom, born in that same sod hut out in South Dakota, facing the uncertainties of a farming life, and then the uncertain future when she moved back to Detroit, the biggest city that she had ever seen, and raising a daughter there and 9 sons, giving birth to my youngest brother at the age of 47, carrying her own infant child alongside 2 very pregnant daughter-in-laws, and like her own mother, always trusting in God and always joyful and full of life. And then, of course, my wife, Pauline, always facing each day with hope and a very certain love, trusting in God as we moved far from our native Michigan, away from all of our family and friends, to the hills of Tennessee, through good times and through tough times. And like my mother and my grandmother, she's always joyful, always smiling, teaching that same faithfulness to our children and preparing each one of them to live a joyful life as well. In today's gospel, we have also 2 holy women, each of whom trusted God in a big way. They each trusted that the Lord's words spoken to each of them would be fulfilled. Each one trusted completely in the Lord, even in the face of considerable odds and even in the face of considerable hardships. Elizabeth was beyond the expected age of being able to bear children. In fact, everyone called her barren. Mary was very young, at least by today's standards. She was probably still a teenager, and she was betrothed, engaged, and not yet married. These 2 very holy women trusted in God's call to them, even though answering that call was going to be very difficult. After all, their calls went against the cultural norms of that time and that place, and their calls went against their religious traditions in a way as well. They trusted what they were told, and they believed that nothing is impossible with God. We read today that Mary quickly went to Judah, to the house of Elizabeth and Zechariah. And as she greeted Elizabeth, she is recognized by her joy-filled relative. And she is recognized for the grace that fills every part of her being. She is recognized in that instant as the God-bearer. She's recognized as the fulfillment of prophecies and the hopes and the dreams of her people. From the beautiful life she bears in her womb, the Spirit surges, and that same Spirit rushes on Elizabeth and stirs her child, John, into kicking with life. And at that moment, both women know that they are truly, truly blessed. Blessed because they trusted in God's word to them. Blessed by trusting in his promises to them. And blessed, above all, by his very extravagant love. So I guess now you're wondering, what's our takeaway from today's gospel? What do we hear in this message today? And how are we challenged by these beautiful women and these beautiful words of exchange of joy? First, we're called to take a journey, to become pilgrims alongside Mary as she travels to the hill country of Judah, to go to those that we love and to share the joy that God has given to each and every one of us, and to see Jesus in those that we meet along the way. Second, we're called to simply say yes, simply and completely. Yes to God's loving plan for our lives and our relationships with others, and to say yes to those hardships as well that we will encounter sometimes when we answer that call. And third, we're called to live our lives with great joy. We're called to be joyful, and we're called to be joy-filled, reflecting the awesome love of God, the love with which he embraces us each and every day. And we're called to bring joy, that joy, to others as well, allowing God's presence in our life to show in the radiance of our own smiles and to show in our generous gifts, the gift we give of ourselves to other people. As Pope Francis notes so well, how can you profess God's love in your life and his loving actions in your life and live with a frown on your face? And so, some questions for us during this last week of Advent. Will we finally let the Word of God become flesh in us this year? Will we trust the call that God gives to us, the call in our life, and live it with joy? Will we feel the stirring of the Spirit in ourselves at his greeting us? While celebrating this Eucharist today, will we allow ourselves to feel that same Holy Spirit as it surges and rushes towards us, causing us to joyfully wiggle into life? In our communion with him, as we accept the very life of Christ into our own bodies, will we truly allow him to guide us, to lead us? Will we let ourselves see God in the people that surround us? Will we answer God as Mary did and say, "Be it done to me according to your word"? Will we recognize God and respond with the same joy that Elizabeth did? As we gather with family and friends during these next few weeks, let us surely be joyful and let us be holy, knowing why we really call him Emmanuel, because God is truly with us.